Hello and welcome to this session. So in all our previous sessions, we have added the constraint while creating the tables, correct? So you created the table. While you are creating the table, you have added the constraint. So this is fine. But what if we already have a table that is created and you want to add the constraint later, right? So in our previous examples, we basically dropped the table and recreated it. That's not the ideal scenario, right? So you should be able to kind of alter this by adding certain comments, right? So that is what we are going to learn today. So for that, let me first drop this table because it already has the constraint. So I'm going to drop this table. Let me recreate this table without constraint. So I'll say create table employee, employee ID, which is number 5. Then employee name varchar 240. I'll keep employee salary number. Let's keep it as 10. Then department number, again number. Let's keep it 5. Gender. So this I only want to put as 1. Okay. So I have this table created. So let me go ahead and execute this. So now this is basically okay. So there is another error here. What happened? If parenthesis was entered without closing it. Okay. Uh-oh. So actually the error is something else, but it actually gave me some other error. So it is saying that all parentheses must be entered in pairs. So I have entered the parenthesis, but the problem here is see the spelling mistake, right? So you can see the other thing here you can see is that all these data types are in bold, but here it is not. So that is also a simple way of identifying that, if you have made any syntax error. So now you don't see any error here. So let me go ahead and execute this. So table is basically created. Now what happens is, like, let's say I want to add some constraints. Okay, so I want to add a constraint. So let's but before that, let's insert some data, insert into EMP, because we also want to ensure that the constant that we added is actually functioning as per our thing, right? Otherwise, it will just be a theoretical one. Okay, department number, gender, okay, values, let's say employee number, and salary, let me put something 10. Yeah, okay. So cool. I'm going to insert this data here. So row is inserted, right? So now I'm trying to insert the same data here. 2 rows inserted. Select this data. You can see this employee ID. Because we don't have any constraints, it is able to accept the duplicates. Okay. Now let me delete this data. Delete from EMP. I want to delete all the data, right? So when you want to delete all the data, you can use truncate as, right? So instead of delete, you can use truncate. There are only 2 records, so it does not matter. But still, let's use the truncate, right? So this is more of a habit. Okay, so table is truncated. If you look at this data, you will not see anything. Now what happens is, now let's add a primary key. Okay, so here, if I want to add a primary key, the table is already created, so I don't want to disturb the table. So what I'll do is I'll say alter table emp. I want to alter this table, and what I want to do. So we have seen this, right? Alter table when we are doing the DDLs, correct? So there is add, modify, those kind of stuff, right? So now what we want to do is I want to add a constant, right? So I will say add constraint, and what I want to add the constraint, I want to add the constraint employee ID, which is primary key, right? I'll say primary key. See, the concept is same. You want to add a constant, you will say constant name, and whatever the constant is, just that if you're coming outside of the table, you use a alter command. That is all. Okay, employee ID, you need to give the correct column name. So exactly, it should match exactly. So let me go ahead and execute this. Now the temple is altered. Sorry, the EMP table is altered, right? Now it has a constant added. Now if I go ahead and execute this, so you can see 1 row is inserted. So let me go ahead and check this to see that confirm that the data is there. Now if I execute this again, This should fail because I have an employee ID constant added, right? So let me go ahead and see unique constraint employee ID is violated. So you actually are able to add the constant. Okay. So similarly, if you want to add a constraint, other constraint also we can add. So let's quickly add a couple of other constraints as well. So let's say alter table employee, you want to add a constraint. So I'll say constraint. So till here it's the same, right? Then you have to give the constraint name. So let's say I give the constraint unique and I want to put this. Okay. That's interesting. We don't have anything which. Okay, let me just put it on ename. Okay, it's not good, but we have very less columns. So I'm just learning the concepts, right? So unique, what is that ename, right? Okay, ename. So I'm just saying that you need to add a unique name every time. Okay, so this is one constraint. So let me go ahead and execute this. So there's some error has happened here. Oh, we have we put the name twice, so we need to delete this. And let's execute this. So employee table is altered. So let me also add a check constant here. So alter table employee add constraint check salary check of salary is greater than 1,000. Okay. So now see, okay, let me just execute this. Uh, Before that, right? So we already have the data correct here. Now, whatever constraints you are adding, you need to ensure that that constraint is not violating the existing data. What I mean by that is, right, when you are saying employee ID on a primary key, right, you should ensure that we do not have any duplicates. Otherwise, it will not allow you to add. So in this case, right, salary is greater than 1,000. You should ensure that salary is all greater than 1,000. Otherwise, it will not allow. So if I put as 10,000, which means I'm trying to add a constraint to a data where it is actually failing, right? So I'm saying the salary should be 10,000 greater than, but I already have a salary which is less than 10,000. So this should not allow the constraints to be added. See, cannot validate check constraint violated because you already have the data, right? So if I don't have the data, then I'll be able to add it. So let's say if I truncate this table or delete from this table, right? So if I delete, what happens is like I don't have any data, right? If I don't have any data, then I can add whatever constants that I want. I can add 10,000. That should not be a problem, right? The problem happens have when you have the data. All right. Okay. So this is how you can add the constant. So let's also quickly uh, add another constraint. So let's say we have not added a foreign key as well, right? So let's add a foreign key. I'll show you how to add a foreign key. So let's for that we need to create a department table, right? So department table, department number 5. So department number should not be null. Department name cat 2 of 20. All right, so let's execute this table. So we have this table executed. Now, oh, we already have a table. So we need to drop this table. So let's drop this table. So we are continuing from the previous sessions, right? So some of the tables may still be existing. So the table got created now. Now I want to alter this table, right? Alter table, emp, right? Add constraint fk. So what is the department number, right? DNO, DNO, right? So foreign key, foreign key, department number. So references, department of department number, right? So this is the department number, same. Okay. Now let me execute this, but pause this video for a second and think about this. Will this work or not? Okay. And why it will work and why it will not work. Okay. Let me execute this, right? See. A reference clause in a create alter statement gives a column list for which there is no matching unique or primary key constraint. So it is saying that you have added a reference key, but you have not added the primary key, right? So this is a concept of reference key. You should have a primary key. So here, this create table, when we added, right, this create table should have a primary key. Okay, so now because we just mentioned not null, we did not mention a primary key. That is why it is failing. So let's alter this table. Alter table department number. Now we need to add a constraint. What constraint we need to add? We need to add a primary key on the department number. So it's a primary key on department number. So this table should have a primary key. So this is altered. Now if you execute it, you will see that this also gets executed properly, right? The table got altered, correct? So these are ways how you can kind of add. Now let's say we want to modify something. Okay, so here we have a constraint, right? Check constraint. So here check constraint, I said like, we had 10,000, right? So now we found like 10,000 is a very big number. So we need to modify it. So how do you modify it? Again, you have to modify it based on data, right? If the data, if whatever you're modifying does not match with the current data, it will fail and it will give you an error. We have seen that, right? It will give an error, so it should not be a problem for you to identify. Now, how do you modify? It's very, very simple. So here, instead of add, I will say modify. So I'll say modify. Now, modify constraint, right? So modify this one. Okay, let's see. Okay, so will this work or not? Okay, because we made some change, right? So see, this is a unexpected keyword, right? So I mean, the reason why I have put like this is because I have seen my students where they look at add, modify, and say, there's just one letter word, so they basically replace it, and it kind of like gives them an error, and they're like, why this error is coming, because this is a different kind of error, unexpected keyword or something, which basically does not tell them, because in their mind they are like this statement is correct and everything, but they are like, why this error is coming and I'm not able to understand. So this is why it is important to understand the syntax. Like not everything might look very similar, but sometimes they are little bit distinct. Okay, so we need to understand that as well. That is the reason why I have added this one. Okay, now what is the right syntax? So for the constraint, right? For this constraint, check constraint, you cannot directly modify it. So you need to first drop that constraint and then you need to recreate it. So how do you drop that constraint? So very simple. So I will say, so let me comment this out because this is not the right syntax. I'll say alter table, table name. Now instead of add, I will say drop constraint. Okay. So drop constraint. What is the constraint name? This one. Okay. So I'll just drop this constraint. Okay. Let's execute this. This is altered, right? Now I can go ahead and now I will add this constraint back, but with a new value. All right. So here I can do this. So you have to drop the constraint and then you have to add the constraint, right? All right. That is all I wanted to discuss today. I hope this was clear to you guys, and I'll see you guys in my next class.